In this life, I absolutely refused to be her cure. Instead, I speed-dialed her ultimate crush, her beloved white moonlight. In my previous run, I was foolish enough to fall for my adopted, unrelated sister. When she got spiked with a forbidden love potion, I ignored her desperate begs to call her dream guy. Instead, I idiotically played the hero and became her cure myself. When her crush walked in, seeing the spicy mess completely shattered him, causing him to flee the country only to end up dying in a horrific plane crash with nothing left behind. After that, she just stared at the news of the crash and did not say a single word. She married me, made everyone happy, but she secretly planned her revenge, keeping me locked in a room day and night like some twisted personal toy. After 3 days and nights of exhausting torture, she threw me into the slums to die a painful death, just like that. But wait, my eyes snap open. I am right back on the exact day my sister got drugged. Heavy, frantic knocking on the bedroom door snapped me right out of my panic attack. It was Lysander. Throwing the door open without a second thought, I saw Serafina on the bed, her skin burning red like a broken neon sign. Lysander turned just as red. He stuttered, asking Caspian if it was true and if she was really drugged. I nodded my head like a manic bobblehead. Yes, man, I know you have been crazy about her forever, and guess what? She actually feels the exact same way. I found your photos and letters hidden in her desk. This is your absolute best chance to finally break the ice. I would really love to call you my brother-in-law. Before the poor guy could even register his embarrassment, I shoved him inside like a package and locked the door with lightning speed. Pretty soon, Lysander's startled gasps echoed from inside, quickly turning into some very muffled, intense sounds. I had heard those exact same noises countless times in my previous life. But back then, her eyes held nothing but utter hatred for me. When did she ever look at me with real love? I took a deep breath, only to realize my cheeks were soaked, though I was not crying out of sadness. Pure joy. Serafina, I messed up completely in my past life, but now I am happily giving you back to Lysander. 100% guaranteed. Just as I was about to sneak off, Madame Sterling's voice suddenly echoed right behind me. Caspian, why are you out here? I just gave her the drug, so go inside with Serafina right now. Mid-sentence, she heard the very loud noises coming from the bedroom, and her jaw dropped in absolute shock. Did you throw Lysander in there? Terrified she would ruin their private session, I grabbed my mother and dragged her downstairs. Mom, the person she actually loves is Lysander. We have both known that forever. Please do not act like the villain and separate them. Madame Sterling looked deeply displeased. You foolish boy, she was raised to be your fiancé from day one. I cannot let her marry someone else. Plus, if she ends up with Lysander, who is going to take over the family business? Neither of us can run a company. She is the only one who can save us, or our rivals will eat us alive. Besides, have you not always been totally obsessed with her? I am your mother. I see how you look at her. Remembering that absolute nightmare of a past life? Yeah, a cold, terrifying shiver runs down my spine. I vigorously shook my head. No, I do not. I have been completely over her for a very long time. She is just my sister, and that is all she will ever be. Mom, please never do anything like this again. Madame Sterling let out a tired sigh, muttering that kids make things sound way too easy. Then what happens to our company? I quickly spoke up, admitting I was childish before and relied too much on her. Starting today, I will step up and handle my own responsibilities. If I do not understand business, I will learn. I just need a bit of time. Madame Sterling froze, and the moment she opened her mouth to speak, I quickly pulled her out the door, terrified she would interrupt Lysander and Serafina's intense, private marathon. Returning to the villa later that night, Lysander was gone, and Serafina was now fully cured and totally sober. Walking into the house, I spotted her glaring quite intensely at the clock on her phone. She looked totally spaced out, but the second she saw me, her face twisted, and she violently grabbed my collar. Her bloodshot eyes looked terrifyingly red, showing a mix of pure hatred and a very bizarre, twisted sense of joy. You are not dead, she hissed. I knew you survived, because you have not suffered enough. Caspian Sterling, how could you just die in the slums? I absolutely forbid it. The moment she said that, we both froze. My face went totally pale. Right then, it hit me that Serafina had also returned from the future. Madame Sterling had absolutely no idea why her adopted daughter was acting so crazed, so she quickly rushed over to separate us. I put on a total act, trembling behind my mother and faking absolute terror. Sis, what is wrong with you? What do you mean dead? I have no clue what you mean. Serafina just stared a hole right through me. She forced 2 fingers onto my pulse, confirming I was, indeed, still alive. She finally calmed down. With a long sigh, she lied straight to my mother about having a nightmare. She claimed she dreamt something awful happened to me. Seeing me just spooked her. Madame Sterling actually laughed. She told her she always doted on me. It was just a dream. My eyes grew warm and red. And it was true. Serafina really did deeply cherish me once upon a time. She even passed up a top-tier college just to tutor me all night. Whenever I failed, she was there to protect me. But after Lysander died, she dragged me straight to hell. Later that night, I suddenly woke up feeling completely suffocated. Get this, I opened my eyes to find a real person pinning me down, and her familiar scent made my blood run totally cold. She locked her arms around me, planting a surprisingly tender kiss on my lips. My entire body went completely rigid. I violently pushed her away. Serafina, what on earth do you think you are doing? She did not even get angry. Instead, she just stared at me with deep, pitch-black eyes before coldly whispering that I must have reincarnated as well. She knew the old me would never reject her. I could only stare back at those frosty eyes in the pitch dark. That wicked look in her eyes sent shivers down my spine, making me tremble all over. It took me a solid minute to collect myself before I calmly replied. Yes, I did. Is this not a second chance from heaven? Now we can start over. There will not be any roadblocks between you and Lysander anymore. I told my sister to rest easy, because this time, I absolutely will not interfere. Serafina just sneered at me with pure, mocking contempt. She accused me of playing matchmaker for her and Lysander just to keep her from hating me. She claimed I was secretly scheming to tear them apart. I shook my head in absolute panic. My voice was firmer than steel. No, I have thought it through. My past feelings were never real love. I was just a confused kid, mistaking codependency for romance, which sparked that tragedy. Now you two can finally be happy. I promise that Mom and I will not get in your way. If you want, I will move incredibly far away. Her brow twisted into a furious knot as pure rage flared in her eyes. Nonsense, she snapped. She barked that she did not believe a single word out of my mouth, then slammed the door and stormed out. Back in her room, she could not understand why she was so furious. She blamed it all on me. She convinced herself I was just playing hard to get, especially since I drove Lysander to his death in our past life just to keep her. Even after being reborn, she thought there was no way I could just stop loving her so instantly. She decided to wait and see how long my little act would last. A few days later, our family company held its massive gala. It was always a huge deal. Every single relative and shareholder showed up, along with every employee. Strangely though, the decor this year looked suspiciously romantic. There were pink roses, sheer curtains, and countless balloons, looking less like a corporate gala and more like an engagement party. Looking at this setup, you just know that something absolutely crazy is about to go down. Over in the crowd, Serafina was busy networking like a total pro with Lysander by her side, treating him like absolute royalty. Ever since that night, they had officially become a couple. Now, at this high-profile event, she held his hand to announce to everyone that Lysander was her one true love. She brought him food, asked him to dance, and even draped her coat over his shoulders so he would not freeze. I did not want to play third wheel, so I headed toward the exit for some fresh air. But then, the host announced that my mother was taking the stage. I stopped in my tracks, watching her step confidently into the spotlight to greet the crowd. She welcomed everyone to the Sterling Group's anniversary gala, praising our brilliant chief executive and adopted daughter, Serafina, for managing this empire with such incredible speed. But secondly, she declared that our family had a massive announcement to share. Her smile grew dangerously wide as her gaze shifted right toward me and Serafina. She basically announces that my late father chose Serafina to take over the family, making her his official, designated daughter-in-law. The moment those words drop, serious alarm bells start ringing. I guess my deep, heartfelt talk with Mom went completely over her head. She is still totally obsessed with forcing me and Serafina together. Mom literally hijacked this massive public party to force us into a marriage. While I am standing there panicking, Serafina suddenly appears beside me like a ghost. Flash of a toxic, mocking smirk, and she whispers right in my ear, "So this is what you meant by never interfering in my life. You really are a slick, silver-tongued liar." My entire mind goes completely blank. Horrific memories of my brutal past life crash into her terrifying, psychotic glare playing like a dark horror film right inside my head. I know if Mom finishes that thought, everything is over. The second she opens her mouth to drop the engagement bomb, I bolt toward the stage like a crazy person. Snatching the microphone straight out of her grip, I take one massive breath and yell, "Apologies for cutting in, everyone. I know exactly what my mother wants to say here. Since this massive, life-changing news is entirely about my own future, I figured I should announce it myself." The audience looks back with polite, expectant smiles. Only Serafina is staring daggers, trying to figure out my play. Down below, Lysander looks incredibly pale. Honestly, he was never completely blind to our weird dynamic, but we always acted like siblings anyway. Since Serafina showed zero romantic interest in me, he played the blissfully ignorant boyfriend. But now, if I announce this forced engagement, he can't keep playing blind. He looks over at her with teary eyes, clearly ready to run out of the building. The blinding stage lights hit my eyes. I blink, look across the crowded room, and speak clearly. Today, I want to declare that I, Caspian Sterling, only view Serafina as an older sister. So, that outdated arranged marriage plan from my late father is officially completely dead. A romance between us is absolutely, completely off the table. Boom, dead silence hits the room. Every pink decoration in my mom's intro clearly hinted at wedding bells. No one ever expected the groom to casually destroy his own engagement live on stage. Even though they are shocked, these wealthy elites know not to mess with family drama, so they offer a very awkward, polite applause. Lysander finally lets out a massive breath. But wait, Serafina is supposed to be thrilled about this, right? Instead, her expression looks darker than the deep sea. She downs her entire glass of wine in a single gulp and storms right out of the hall, totally leaving poor Lysander behind. I quickly step off the stage, pull my mother into a quiet corner, and give her a stern warning. Mom, didn't we literally discuss this? I don't have feelings for her anymore. Why are you running schemes behind my back? I am saying this for the absolute last time. There is no future for us. If you ever try to force us together again, I will pack up, move overseas, and never return. You know me. I do not bluff. Madam Sterling realizes she just stepped on a landmine. Panicked, she quickly promises to back off and never speak of it again. She begs me not to scare her, saying I am all she has left, asking what she would even do if I left. Letting out a heavy sigh, she asks what happens to the company. I finally ease up, hugging her tightly to reassure her that I am already studying business. I will take over the business soon to preserve my father's legacy. Even though you raised Serafina, she is still technically an outsider to our family. Risking everything on someone else is never safe. Plus, Mom, be nicer to Lysander. Stop giving him that terrifying mother-in-law glare. He is the guy my sister actually loves, and angering her brings us absolutely zero benefits. Madam Sterling freezes, staring at me like I was replaced by aliens. She mutters that I have completely changed and matured. She notes I used to be so naive. All I can do is let out a bitter laugh. Trust me, if you lived through the horrific torture I did in my past life, you would lose your innocence too. If I stayed naive, we would both be dead. Once the event ends, my mother and I wait outside for our ride. By pure coincidence, we run right into Serafina walking out with Lysander. Lysander politely greets us, which prompts my mother to suggest that I should just catch a ride in Serafina's car. I instantly shake my hands like I am warding off some evil demon, telling her no way, our driver will be here any second. I insist that she should take my future brother-in-law home first, since living so far away all alone is quite unsafe. Hearing me call him brother-in-law, Lysander blushes red like a tomato. But Serafina? She snaps her head up, looking so cold she could freeze the sun, demanding to know what I just called him. I just smile back sincerely. I tell her he is my brother-in-law because they are clearly so in love. They will marry eventually anyway. Calling him that now changes nothing. Lysander looks absolutely thrilled by my approval, unable to hide his massive, happy smile. He laughed and said he owed me a massive gift the next time we met. Serafina just frowned coldly, stayed completely silent, and dragged him right into her car. Inside the car, Serafina sat in absolute silence, clearly brooding over something heavy. Lysander noticed the weird tension and asked softly, "What is wrong, Sarah? You have seemed unhappy ever since the gala." Serafina just rubbed her temples, her voice icy. "Nothing," she said, "just tired." Lysander nodded thoughtfully, but a moment later, he spoke up again. "Sarah, I feel like you have changed. You used to adore your little brother and spoil him rotten. Even when we started dating and you knew his mom wanted you two married, you never held a grudge. But now, you act like you absolutely loathe him. You never smile at him. You talk to him like he is ice. Yet, I can still feel that you deeply care about him. Can you please tell me what exactly happened?" Serafina went silent for a bit before trying to pacify him. "Lysander, do not overthink. I just do not want any unnecessary drama in our relationship." Seeing she did not want to talk, Lysander assumed he was just being paranoid and let it go. Since the engagement was publicly called off, my mom knew Serafina was a dead end. So, she quickly set up another blind date for me. I had absolutely no idea who it was until I showed up. Talk about a shocker. It was an old acquaintance, the very girl who had chased me relentlessly for 3 years. Back then, my mind was entirely occupied by Serafina, so I mercilessly friend-zoned her. I heard that in my past life after I married Serafina, Aura threw herself into work, moved to America, and never looked back. I never expected she would be my blind date today. Reuniting under such awkward circumstances, I felt super embarrassed. But Aura was totally chill, even starting the explanation by saying Madam Sterling told her I no longer liked Serafina and canceled our engagement. So, she pulled some strings to get my mom to set this up. She just wanted a real second chance. But she added that if this makes me uncomfortable, she can easily tell my mom we did not click. no pressure. Faced with such an open, mature attitude, acting awkward would just make me look like a total wimp. Even if we did not date, we could be friends. I was overcomplicating things. But honestly, considering the trauma I just respawned from, I was in no mental state to jump into romance immediately. So, I was honest and said I needed time to figure things out. Ara smiled gently, immediately agreeing and respecting my pace. Once we cleared the air, hanging out became an absolute breeze. Ara was incredibly sweet and attentive. She took me to an amusement park to de-stress, then to a fantastic restaurant. Throughout the date, she was incredibly meticulous. She remembered my favorite foods, my allergies, and every tiny detail. With each little gesture, my impression of her improved dramatically. After the date, Ara drove me home. Right at the gate, we bumped into Serafina and Lysander, who were also just arriving. A tense four-way standoff ensued. Serafina glared at Ara with this incredibly venomous, cold hostility. Bringing him back this late on a first date? Miss Shen, do you not think that is pretty inappropriate? Seeing her nitpick, I defended Ara, saying it was my fault for losing track of time. Do not blame her. The moment I spoke, Serafina's face turned even uglier. Ara, huh? She ground her teeth, squeezing the name out like a curse, barely holding back her volcanic rage. Sensing the impending disaster, Lysander quickly played peacekeeper and dragged Serafina inside. Once the door was shut, Lysander could not hold back Sarah. You really seem to hate Caspian's friend. Did she offend you before? Serafina froze, then dismissively furrowed her brow. No, I am just worried Caspian is getting involved with the wrong crowd. That night, Serafina came to my room again. She tried the handle, only to find it locked tight from the inside. Her face darkened, letting out a cold scoff. A few minutes later, check this out, she climbs out of her room and literally ninja flips right through my window. She silently crept up to my bed and pinned me down, leaving only our heavy breathing in the dark. Whispering through gritted teeth, she asked if I had fun with her. I violently shoved her off and sat up. Since I was trying to treat her strictly like a sister now, I had to maintain the perfect sibling social distance. Not too close, not too far. I forced a polite smile and said I had a blast at the amusement park. We rode the roller coaster and got Thai food. But before I could finish, Serafina cut me off, her breathing weirdly erratic. Wow, you are getting really manipulative, are you not? Using another woman as a smokescreen? Playing hard to get with me? No, I said, my tone firmer than ever. I already convinced Mom to stop meddling in our lives. From now on, as long as you leave me alone, we can live completely separate lives. Just siblings? Siblings? She sneered, shaking me. You think I would settle for just being siblings with someone I like? Serafina shot me a look of pure disgust, warning me not to think I could fool her. She slammed my bedroom door shut and stormed off. The next morning, I dressed early to head out for my date with Era, but the second I stepped downstairs, I ran straight into Lysander and Serafina. I bet it was planned, but she claimed Lysander needed a guy's fashion advice, practically forcing me to tag along with them. Lysander agreed, saying he owed me a gift and practically dragged me. Left with no choice, I reluctantly followed them outside. Out on the street, Serafina was totally doting on Lysander, acting like I did not even exist. Watching them walk ahead, I honestly could not figure out her angle. I was reborn, completely over her, and determined to stay away. So why was she still keeping tabs on me like this? While I was totally distracted, we passed a storefront. Suddenly, a massive billboard overhead detached and came crashing straight down on us. With a terrifying crash, hold on, time completely stopped. Out of nowhere, Serafina shielded me, wrapping me in a tight hug. Lysander was knocked aside, staring in absolute, jaw-dropping shock. My brain totally short-circuited. I had no idea why she would abandon her beloved Lysander just to protect me. Seeing tears pool in Lysander's eyes, I panicked. I pushed Serafina off, helped Lysander up, and frantically pleaded with him not to misunderstand since my sister forced me out today. She just knew Mom would kill her if I got hurt, so she reacted on pure instinct. Right then, my phone rang. I picked up instantly and used it as my perfect escape, waving goodbye as I sprinted away from that crazy drama. I told them I had to run and meet a friend, and an hour later, I was finally meeting up with Era. My chest was still racing from that close call. Sensing my heavy anxiety, Ara pulled a cute plush bunny from her pocket to comfort me. She gently coaxed me until some color finally returned to my pale face. Ara quietly studied my expression. She noted that Caspian used to be so energetic, but now I felt like a totally different person. Looking back at my brutal past life, just breathing felt like a massive luxury. There was no way I could stay naive. I kept racking my brain, trying to prove to Serafina that I was totally done with her. Noticing me drift off, Era waved her hand right in front of my face. She asked if she could help, and right as I snapped back to reality, a crazy idea hit me. Ready? If I made Ara my girl, would that clear Serafina's doubts? But that felt incredibly unfair to my sweet friend. She was a truly kind soul, and since I was not fully in love yet, I refused to manipulate her and chose honesty. I told Era I was in a massive mess and needed her to officially stand by my side as my wife. If we do this, but I cannot give you my entire heart right away, is that okay with you? I honestly did not expect her to say yes. Marriage is serious, and my proposal was pure strategy. I knew I was being delusional and braced myself for a totally justified, harsh rejection. Instead, Era looked up with pure excitement in her eyes. She grabbed my hands tightly and promised she did not mind one single bit if it helped me. I stood there completely speechless for a second, then smiled and squeezed her hands right back. We agreed to try. Over the next few days, we hung out constantly and speedrun every relationship milestone. I eventually invited her to dinner, marking the very first time I had ever brought a girl home. My mother, Madame Sterling, was absolutely thrilled and welcomed her warmly. But that evening, Serafina walked right in. Seeing us acting like a happy family, her expression instantly iced over. Even though she had already eaten, she ordered the maid to bring her a bowl and forced her way right onto the dinner table. Ara was incredibly attentive, peeling my shrimp, cutting up my steak, and even meticulously removing every single bone from my fish. Her elite care was so impressive that even my mother could not stop praising her. She praised Ara for being so sweet, saying she would never have to worry about Caspian again. Hearing that, Serafina turned green with envy. She gripped her chopsticks so hard, her knuckles went pure white. She forced a fake, empty smile, mocking Ara for knowing how to take care of men with such expert precision. She sneered that Ara must have dated a whole army of guys to get that much experience, but Ara just smiled. Putting her chopsticks down, she looked my mother in the eye and confessed she had crushed on Caspian for years. She admitted he was the only one she ever liked, so she never dated anyone else. I froze. I honestly did not expect her to play along so perfectly, even inventing a backstory about a massive, long-term crush. But I had to roll with the act, so I flashed a pretty bashful smile, saying her love made me incredibly happy. Serafina's eyebrows instantly twisted into a demonic knot. She squeezed her glass so hard it literally shattered into tiny pieces. She slammed her chopsticks down, muttered a tense goodbye to Mom, and stomped upstairs. After that dramatic display, even a blind person could tell Serafina was furious. Era did not stay much longer. Walking her to her car, I hesitated before pulling her back. I had been debating this internally, but I looked her dead in the eye and asked if she saw what just happened. If she stayed with me, she would have to deal with my pretty psycho sister constantly causing absolute chaos. Was she actually sure she still wanted to marry me? Era blinked, then let out a light, breezy laugh. She reached out, affectionately poking my forehead. She told me my problems were her problems, and she never considered me a burden. Just being with me was enough. She told me to stop overthinking because with her, my only job was to be happy. I was completely stunned. Nobody had ever told me my only job was to be happy. My parents always drilled a different message into me. As the only son, the weight of the Sterling Group would eventually fall on my shoulders. I could never afford to be reckless. I couldn't be picky. I had to maintain a perfect relationship with Serafina. Because of all that brainwashing, I subconsciously believed I was destined to marry her and had to love her. I never realized that entire premise was totally wrong from the start. I let out a laugh of pure, unadulterated relief, and right then, all my defensive walls completely crumbled. So, right then, I looked at her and made my choice. I told her to bring her ID tomorrow. We were officially getting that marriage license, and that very night, Serafina predictably crept up to my window again. Only this time, not only was the door locked, but the window was sealed as tightly as a maximum security prison. She stared at the locked glass, laughing out of sheer fury. Wow, Caspian, she thought. You are actually locking me out like a common burglar. She knocked on the glass, but got zero response, yelling that she knew I was awake. As the minutes ticked by, I gave zero reaction. Her eyes turned completely glacial. Fine, she thought, keep playing your little game. The next morning, before Serafina even made it downstairs, her assistant called. An urgent crisis had broken out with an overseas partnership, requiring her immediate presence. Since Serafina had basically run the entire company for years, she had to handle this herself. She originally had a lot of angry things to say to me, but she was completely out of time. She decided to deal with business first and interrogate me later. Serafina left in a massive rush. She spent several grueling days in the United States fixing the crisis, with zero time to check the news back home. By the time she finally wrapped everything up and boarded her flight back, half a month had already passed. Landing early the next morning, she massaged her aching temples in her seat. During this entire trip, I had not reached out to her even once. In the past, whenever she traveled, I would annoy her with 10 calls a day, begging for local snacks or cool souvenirs. She always complained about how annoying it was, yet she always bought them anyway. Now, there was a whole 2 weeks of total radio silence. Her chest felt weirdly tight, as if a massive boulder was crushing her lungs. She honestly had no idea what was wrong with her. After a long 10-hour flight, the plane landed smoothly. Lysander was waiting there to pick her up, immediately complaining the second he saw her. He told her she was such a workaholic, complaining that she had not replied to a single text or call. Serafina gave him a quick kiss to quiet him, explaining it was a crisis and she did not have a second to breathe. She promised it would not happen again, asking if he needed something. Lysander just smiled, asking if he needed a reason to miss her. But then he revealed there was a huge event today. They were not going home yet, he was taking her to a wedding. Serafina rubbed her exhausted temples, asking whose wedding could possibly require her presence right off a plane. Lysander only smiled mysteriously. He promised she would see when they arrived. It was a surprise, and she was already dressed beautifully. She might steal the bride's thunder. Serafina assumed it was just a joke and did not think much of it. The long flight had completely drained her energy, so she closed her eyes to rest. Half an hour later, the car pulled up to a grand hotel. Lysander called out that they had finally arrived. Serafina slowly opened her eyes and casually glanced out of her window. But wait until you see this. Her heart completely stopped when she saw the entire venue covered in blue bells. Those were my favorite flowers. I once told her that my dream wedding had to be overflowing with blue bells. She frantically threw the door open and stumbled out, just as someone near the entrance shouted that the couple had arrived. She whipped her head around just in time to watch a fleet of luxury cars pull up, the lead door swinging open as we stepped out. She walked around to the passenger side, took my hand, and gently led me out. Seeing this, Serafina froze as if struck by lightning. Yes, this was my wedding. Her eyes stretched wide, staring at Alara and me in complete shock. Her mind simply could not process how the man who desperately chased her in his past life was now happily marrying someone else. That sudden gasp caught Lysander's attention. He asked if she knew I was dating, since we registered our marriage the day she left. Lysander tried to stop her, but Serafina charged straight at me like an angry bull. She snatched my wrist, trying to yank me away. She told me I was leaving with her right now, and she would forgive all this nonsense. I had barely even stepped out of the wedding car and found my balance before this madwoman ambushed me, dragging me forward a few steps. That tight grip and those delusional words, if I did not know her voice, I would have called for security. Thankfully, Alara stepped in and grabbed my other hand. Glaring back at Serafina's furious eyes, she stood her ground. Alara spoke up first, asking where exactly she thought she was taking her husband. She put so much power into that word husband, making the flex incredibly obvious to absolutely everyone around us. Serafina definitely felt that smug attitude but just sneered in absolute contempt. Ignoring Alara completely, she fixed her possessive glare on me, demanding I say who I was actually leaving with. To her, my total devotion was like some unbreakable law of nature. But get this, she did not even think I would say no. Yet when she braced herself to pull me, I did not budge. She spun around, only to find me firmly shaking my head, telling her that I was getting married today. If you are here for the ceremony, you are welcome, but if you have other plans, then you should probably head home. Hearing that, a triumphant grin spread across Alara's face, while Serafina's confident mask completely shattered right then and there. Lysander cautiously walked over, pulling her arm and asking what was wrong, and if it was not good that I found happiness. He asked why she was doing this, keeping the words deliberately ruining it to himself. Standing close by, he heard everything perfectly. Serafina was acting completely out of her mind. Screaming at your sibling's wedding is definitely not how a supportive sister behaves. Instead, she looked like a bitter woman crashing her ex's wedding. Lysander pulled her away, telling Alara and me to head inside first. Go on in, he said. Do not miss your special moment. Just ignore her. I smiled, nodded, locked arms with Alara, and walked inside. Back outside, Lysander held a struggling Serafina back until she finally stopped fighting. But her eyes never left my back, leaving Lysander with a bitter sting in his heart. He quietly asked if she actually liked me, and hearing that, Serafina practically jumped like a cat getting its tail stepped on. She defensively snapped that he was just a little brother to her, questioning how long he had even known this Alara woman anyway. Did he even know her true colors? She claimed she just hated seeing him rush into marriage and treat it like a total joke. After that frantic rant, she somehow believed her own ridiculous excuse, and let out a quiet sigh of relief. Deep down, she could not even begin to explain why she was panicking so much. Then, suddenly remembering her place, she turned to Lysander and hugged his shoulder, telling him not to overthink things. She swore he was the only one she had ever loved. Lysander did not say he believed her, but he did not call her a liar either. Feeling uncomfortable under his heavy gaze, she fell silent and nervously looked toward the entrance of the hotel. Inside, the venue was a massive sea of joy and celebration. On autopilot, she walked straight through the doors, with Lysander close behind her. Right at the entrance stood a giant wedding portrait. In the picture, Alara and I were pressed close, smiling warmly, and looking completely in love. Serafina stared in a complete daze, suddenly realizing she could not even remember the last time she saw me smile like that. Ever since Lysander died in her past life, she became entirely consumed by revenge. She married me back then, but only treated me like a worthless punching bag. Since those dark days, every time I looked at her, I felt nothing but absolute terror. Following Lysander to an empty table, she sat down, grabbed a bottle of wine, and just started chugging. Lender could not even stop her, so he just watched her drink. Soon, the other guests nearby began to whisper. Everyone came to enjoy the ceremony, not watch someone aggressively chug alone. Honestly, you would be asking who she was too. Maybe she was the groom's bitter ex, downing wine like water. But others pointed out the sterling heir never had an ex. That woman was his family's adopted daughter. Word on the street is she was raised to be his bride, but the heir dumped her for someone else. Now she is just sitting there, drinking her pain away. She definitely does not look like she wanted this breakup. Honestly, who even knows what these rich folks are thinking? The whispers kept buzzing around her, but Serafina tuned them out. She did not even notice Lysander turning pale as a ghost right beside her. Through her drunken fog, she heard the host on stage yell that the groom could finally kiss the bride. She snapped her eyes up just as my veil was lifted. Yes, I was the one wearing the veil for gender equality, and my face underneath was burning bright red. This specific visual triggered Serafina so badly. Watch this, her brain completely short-circuits. Throwing all logic out the window, she jumped up and screamed at the top of her lungs for us to stop. Everyone gasped, and the host choked on his words. In the painful silence, he nervously asked if there was a problem. Up on stage, I froze. When I turned and saw Serafina standing there, my heart sank. I had already avoided her once at the door today. What kind of stunt was she pulling now? Did she really hate me that much? Even with her precious Lysander sitting right next to her? She still had to ruin my life. I scowled, my patience officially hitting absolute zero. Seriously, what was her problem? As Serafina opened her mouth to speak, Lysander suddenly bolted up and grabbed her by the arm. He flashed me an extremely apologetic smile, pleading that Sarah had simply drunk too much and was completely out of it. He promised to take her out to rest, but before he could, she broke free from his grip, ran onto the stage, and yanked me back, screaming, "How dare I marry someone else? Who gave me permission?" Her incoherent screaming basically proved Lysander's point that she was totally wasted. Guests started shouting for Lysander to get her out so we could finish our wedding. Grimacing, he had to physically drag her kicking and screaming off the stage. I was honestly terrified. If anyone filmed her crazy, possessive rant, my new life would be ruined. I struggled against her grip until Ara stepped in, acting as my shield. I looked at Lysander and urged him to take her away so we could handle the rest. As Lysander finally hauled her out of the hall, some sanity returned, and she realized just how incredibly stupid she had made herself look. So, she played along with his drunk excuse, limp noodling her body and letting him drag her away. Once they were out of sight, she instantly snapped out of it, acting normal, and sheepishly apologized to Lysander. She claimed she had too much to drink, but in reality, she had no idea why she just snapped. In that exact moment, her only thought was that she could not let them kiss. Now, sobered up, she felt utterly ridiculous. Lysander desperately wanted to demand what she was thinking, because he was just as baffled by her behavior. Why did she do that? They grew up together in the orphanage, and he had always believed she genuinely loved him. That was the only reason he slept with her when she was drugged, but now he was realizing her feelings were totally different. He wanted to confront her right then, but he feared the truth, so he simply told her she was drunk. He suggested getting her to a room, and seeing his teary eyes, Serafina did not argue and pulled him into a hug. She begged him not to overthink it, but he just silently shook his head, dropped her off, and walked away. Alone in the dark, her thoughts immediately drifted back to me and my wedding today. That meant tonight I would be with Ara. Had I actually married someone else and let her go? How was that even possible? I loved her so obsessively. Now her head was just a chaotic mess. She felt like the story was going completely off script. You can almost feel her paranoia ramping up here. Was I still angry about our past life? Or did I hire a fake wife to make her jealous since she was with Lysander? Did I really think she would care who I married? What a joke. If I wanted to play games, she would let me. Convincing herself of this lie, she forced her eyes shut and desperately tried to erase me from her mind. Meanwhile, after the ceremony, Ara and I finally headed up to our suite. She walked out of the bathroom looking absolutely stunning, instantly turning my face into a bright red tomato. I threw my hands over my eyes, peeking through my fingers as I nervously stuttered. I asked why she came out naked, and she gasped in realization before looking at my peeking hands and laughing. She laughed it off as habit, since we are married now anyway. Pulling my hands down, she leaned in close and whispered that if I liked what I saw, I could look and touch all I wanted. She boldly guided my hand toward her stomach, her intense gaze locking with mine as my heart started doing absolute parkour in my chest. I completely forgot how to even function as a human being. My heart was hammering wildly as my palm touched her soft, cool skin. She must have just showered. It felt pretty chilly. I looked down. My hand was literally resting flat on her abs. I coughed violently, frantically yanking my hand away and retreating 3 steps. My eyes darted around the room, desperately searching for any safe zone. Seeing my face turn red enough to fry an egg, she finally took pity on me. "All right, I am just teasing you, Caspian. I know you haven't fully accepted me yet, but that is completely fine. You already married me. After all, I have all the time in the world to wait for you to truly fall in love and belong completely to me. I honestly thought that by marrying someone else, Serafina would finally believe I wanted to bless her relationship with Lysander, but I completely underestimated her psycho level of stubbornness. On the second day of my marriage, I officially joined the Sterling Group to take over my late dad's legacy. Serafina got the news instantly. She kept quiet at first, but on day 2, she suddenly transferred me to be her personal secretary. I wanted to say no, but then I realized she had trained as CEO for years and managed the company flawlessly. Learning the ropes directly from her would be 100 times faster than trying to figure things out alone. But get this, my total lack of resistance was completely twisted by her delusional mind. Inside the CEO office, I dropped the requested file on her desk and turned around. Suddenly, she snatched my wrist. A hard yank pulled me backward, making me crash right onto her lap. "Caspian Sterling, I knew you had not given up," she gloated. "Did you not say you would stop bothering me?" she sneered. "Why beg to be my secretary now?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. Scrambling off her lap, I stood there speechless. Since when did working at my family company count as harassing her? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to be patient. "I did not join this firm to harass you. Sister, I am a married man. I will never stand between you and Lysander." Stopping to let my frustration pass, I fired right back. "If you are so paranoid about me, why do you two not just marry?" That made her freeze instantly. But I felt like I just hit a brilliant idea. "You love him, right? Do not worry. On your wedding day, I will give you a massive gift." I tapped the desk. "File delivered. I have got to run." But seriously, consider my advice. Serafina never expected this twist. She just watched me walk away, making no move to stop me. Slumping back in her chair, my exact words echoed through her head. "Marry Lysander." Logically, she should be ecstatic. She should ask Lysander to marry her immediately. Was this not her dream in her previous life? Marry Lysander, live happily ever after. But despite being back for months now, why had she not mentioned it? Did she forget, or was she subconsciously avoiding it? But since I challenged her, her ego made her feel that not proposing meant admitting defeat. Driven by pure spite, she pulled up Lysander's contact and typed out a quick message. She stared at the screen for ages with zero reply, so she assumed he was busy and brushed it off. On the other side, Lysander stared at that sudden message for a long time. "Lysander, let us get married." No extra words, just a dry, robotic statement. In the past, he would have been absolutely over the moon. Now, he was not even sure she actually wanted him. Every person dreams of a romantic proposal. I mean, seriously, his proposal from a billionaire CEO girlfriend actually felt less romantic than ordering an Uber. Just a cold text on a screen. He could not see her, but he bet she had zero emotional reaction. Sending that text meant less to her than crashing Caspian's wedding. Lysander forced a bitter smile as a tear hit his screen. He wiped it away. After a heavy silence, he typed a reply, pretending he just noticed it. Sending back, "That is the most insincere proposal ever." He hit send. No reply came. He laughed at himself, wiped his face, and coped, thinking she is just bad at romance. As long as she loves me, nothing else matters. Locking his phone, he pretended the text never even happened. That evening, Lysander finally finished work. Bothered by that text, he could not resist stopping by the Sterling Group. He texted her, but got no reply. She probably did not see it. As he walked toward the building, I happened to be leaving. All was already waiting outside for me. When she saw me, she immediately draped a jacket over my shoulders and led me to her car. For some reason, Lysander froze in his tracks, standing deep in the shadows while watching us walk away. Only when our car disappeared did he head inside, taking the elevator straight to the CEO office. He pushed the door open, expecting to see her buried in paperwork, but instead, she stood by the window, smoking and staring down at the street. She was so incredibly focused she did not even notice him walk inside. He strolled up next to her and followed her eyes. She was staring right at the spot where Era and I were just holding hands. He casually remarked that she really seemed to care about her brother, but honestly, she did not need to. Era was handpicked by Madame Sterling. They look happy together. Stop micromanaging his life now. Startled, Serafina flinched and asked when he got here. Lysander, ignoring her obvious guilt, pointed at his screen. I texted you. Guess you missed it. Serafina checked her phone. He had indeed texted. And look at that, his reply to her proposal was sitting right there. She fake coughed to hide her panic. Sorry, work was crazy. Remembering his earlier comment, she pulled him into a playful hug and asked, You said I was insincere, so what actually counts as sincere? But Lysander never answered. He just told her to figure it out. The topic was buried for good, never brought up again. A month later, my birthday arrived. My first as a married man. Ara treated it like a national holiday. For an entire week, she secretly plotted this party, basically ghosting me. When I got off work and saw her text canceling my ride again, I sighed. Honestly, I am not a toddler. I do not need to be chauffeured around every day. I reached for my phone to call a cab. Suddenly, a sleek, obnoxious luxury car pulled up right to my toes. Get in. I am driving you. Seeing Serafina sitting inside, my good mood instantly evaporated. I frowned. No thanks, sis, I will just catch a cab. But she stared me down with pure psycho intensity, clearly planning to block the road forever if I did not just get in. Defeated, I gave up. She was lounging in the back, and I had zero desire to share oxygen with her. So, I grabbed the front door handle. Locked. She pursed her lips, looking incredibly annoyed as she muttered, Sit in the back. It sounded like a royal order. I took 3 deep breaths to suppress my rage, opened the door, and reluctantly climbed into the back. I slammed the door as hard as possible to show my anger. Speak, what warning are you handing out today? Serafina did not expect that at all. What do you mean? She asked. My bottled-up anger exploded into a sharp, sarcastic laugh. Do I really need to spell it out, CEO Sterling? Ever since you returned, every single interaction we have is just you warning me to stay away from you and Lysander. Even though I keep saying I am over you, and even though I literally got married, you still think I am plotting to steal you back. Tell me, how did I offend you and your precious boyfriend today? Serafina went completely silent. She wanted to argue, but looking back at our recent history, she realized I was totally right. Up front, the driver nervously glanced in the rearview mirror, but Serafina's lethal glare instantly forced him back to watching the road. After a heavy silence, she finally scrambled to find an excuse. I actually need a favor, she said, watching my face like a hawk. I want to propose to Lysander. He says I am not sincere, and I do not know how this works. Can you help me? The second she asked, she saw me freeze. But a second later, I let out a massive sigh of relief and smiled. Absolutely zero heartbreak, just pure joy. Congrats, sis, you finally figured it out. I looked out the window and saw we were almost home. I told the driver to pull over and eagerly hopped out, waving at a totally stunned Serafina. As for the proposal tips, just call me later. I have to go inside now. Ara will be worried. I practically skipped away, waving happily. Serafina had no reason to hold me back. She watched me walk further and further away until I suddenly stopped because standing in front of me was a gently smiling Ara. Boss, should we leave? The driver squeaked. Watching Serafina's face turn absolutely demonic, his voice faded to a whisper. She kicked the driver out and jumped into the front seat, but did not leave. You can see it in her eyes. She glared at us like bugs to crush, completely consumed by a wave of pure, toxic jealousy. She gripped the steering wheel hard and violently slammed on the gas. Ara and I were walking hand in hand, completely oblivious to the incoming metal missile. Suddenly, a roaring engine screeched right behind us. Ara turned, but the bright high beams blinded her completely. In that instant, I screamed in terror, Ara! Crash! A sickening thud echoed as Ara was launched into the air. Thankfully, I had yanked her back at the last millisecond, so she stayed conscious. I cradled her bleeding body, my hands shaking violently as I dialed 911. I looked up to see who the maniac driver actually was. My blood instantly ran cold. It was Serafina. Her heavy steps matched my pounding heart, marching forward like a literal demon. Nightmare memories of my past life being thrown into the slums and tortured to death flooded my brain. My instincts screamed at me to run, but Ara was bleeding in my arms. I could only watch her draw closer. Her eyes swirled with chaotic, twisted emotions as she whispered like the devil himself, Caspian. Time to go home, she said. I shook my head frantically, tears streaming down my face. Ara was covered in blood, trying to comfort me, but she could barely lift her arm. That movement caught Serafina's eye. Looking down, she let out a soft, psychotic chuckle, saying she almost forgot about her. The malice in her voice terrified me. Running with a critically injured wife was impossible. I just hugged Ara tighter, staring up at Serafina with pure hatred. But Serafina did nothing. She just stood there, waiting alongside us for the ambulance to arrive. Soon, the medics arrived and rushed Ara to the emergency room. Unbelievably, Serafina followed us right to the hospital. While Ara was in surgery, I waited in the hallway. Seeing Serafina stroll up looking completely unbothered made my anxiety spike. She reached out to pat my head with a smile. Caspian, do not worry. As the driver, I had to check on her. Sitting beside me, her tone was sickeningly casual. Relax, she said, the Sterlings can easily afford any payout. I already paid her medical bills so she can stay until she is 100% healed. So now, Caspian, come home with me. I stared back at her in complete horror. I stood up quickly, backing away as far as possible. Right then, she looked exactly like the psycho who had me killed in my past life. I was shaking, but I still wanted to escape. Sister Serafina, this is straight up attempted murder. You nearly killed my wife, and you seriously expect me to go home with you? Serafina shook her head calmly. See, she is not dead because I never wanted to kill her. I just need her to stop being married to you. I was utterly speechless. Seriously, on what grounds can she even demand this? Lysander died because of me, and you hated me for it. You tortured me for years, but now Lysander is back. I completely stopped bothering you. You are literally on the verge of proposing to him. What kind of insane mental breakdown is this? Our argument did not last long. She chopped my neck. I blacked out, thinking this is just great as she caught me. Ara and I are both getting destroyed by this psychopath again. When I finally woke up, it was the next afternoon. I looked around this completely unfamiliar room. Judging by the lavish decor, it was certainly no hospital. Remembering that Serafina kidnapped me, I sighed. This had to be her private estate. In my previous life, she kept me locked away to torture me. But in this timeline, I completely gave up on her. Why on earth was she doing this again? Right as I was wondering, the door clicked open. In walked Serafina, dressed up and looking completely flawless. Seeing me conscious, she sat on the edge of the mattress with a soft smile, asking how I felt. I kept my face stone cold, turning away to ignore her. I knew that since she dragged me here, she would not be letting me go easily. Serafina did not care about my hostility. Even my obvious disgust did not faze her, as she gently picked up and stroked a strand of my hair. Just when I thought we would sit in this creepy silence forever, she suddenly began to speak, almost talking to herself. Caspian, you probably will not believe me, but the person I truly love is you. It took a very long time for me to accept this because originally, I genuinely believed my heart belonged to Lysander. I was so furious when he died in our past life, and I mistook that rage for love. I sought revenge on you, torturing you because I wanted you to feel my pain. But I never wanted you to die. Her voice suddenly cracked, choking back tears as she repeated that she never wanted me dead. On the day you died, I was actually watching the entire time. I only ordered them to scare you, never expecting you to just give up and die. After you passed away, I avenged you. Every single person in the slums who ever laid a finger on you was utterly destroyed by my hands. She sounded incredibly tragic, but honestly, I felt absolutely nothing. I sat up, looking her dead in the eye. You avenged me and destroyed everyone who hurt me. But the person who shattered me the most, wasn't that you, Serafina? The air froze instantly. After a long pause, she burst out laughing, agreeing that she indeed hurt me the most. And that is why the very last life I took was my own. You see, Caspian, I will do absolutely anything for you. Staring directly into her cold, empty eyes, my spine turned to ice. In that split second, I finally realized the terrifying truth. The version of Serafina who returned from the dead was a full-blown psychopath, a totally irredeemable lunatic. In our previous life, she drove my mother to suicide and watched me get tortured in the slums until I died. In this life, she cold-bloodedly ran Ara over, locked me up, and spewed all this twisted romantic garbage. Is there anything this psycho won't do? I swallowed my mounting fear, trying to appear brave. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, her phone alarm went off for dinner time. She asked if I wanted to eat downstairs or have it brought up. Seeing my silent glare, she happily decided she would bring it up. She did not even wait for my response before happily skipping downstairs. Once she was gone, I immediately hopped out of bed to find an escape. Windows were welded shut and guards blocked the door. With my phone gone, I was completely off the grid. I had no idea how Era was doing. If she knew I was kidnapped, she'd be absolutely terrified. Standing by that window, I deeply regretted dragging her into my family's toxic mess. The door swung open again. Serafina walked in carrying a tray of food. Catching me by the window, a dark glint flashed in her eyes. Why is he still trying to escape? Why can't he just be a good boy and stay by my side? The moment she walked in, I knew her thugs surrounded the house. She wasn't even hiding it. By the time I turned around, that psycho look was completely gone, replaced by a gentle smile. I had the chef cook all your favorites. Try them. If you hate it, I'll have them remake everything. I silently sat down and just started eating. Keeping my strength up was the only way I'd ever break out of this prison. Running the Sterling group meant Serafina couldn't babysit me 24/7. By day 3 of my captivity, her visits finally started slowing down. A week later, my disappearance finally blew up. Since I vanished right after Era got run over, everyone assumed I was just staying at the hospital with her. But once she recovered and asked for me, everyone realized I was completely missing. Tensions escalated when Era's doctor mentioned that the last time he saw me, I was arguing with the hit-and-run driver, Serafina. That was the ultimate lead. Era tracked down a secret, newly bought villa under Serafina's name and scoped it out. Later that afternoon, we locked eyes through my barred window. With my exact coordinates pinned, the rest was simple. Era literally led a SWAT team of police to raid the villa. The maids obviously couldn't fight the cops. They watched helplessly as I was rescued, immediately exposing Serafina's kidnapping scheme. That very day, Serafina was hauled into the station. But thanks to our family ties, they called it a domestic dispute and swept it under the rug. Within an hour, she strolled right out of the station, completely untouched. But check this out, this entire nightmare actually had one massive silver lining. Madame Sterling finally realized that leaving 100% of the empire to an adopted daughter was a colossal mistake. If Serafina went rogue, she could easily steal the entire family legacy. Right now, my mother and I had zero power to stop her. This crazy kidnapping proved she was a ticking time bomb. For once, Mom actually wanted to help me reclaim the company. But starting from the bottom is a brutal climb. Serafina's roots in the company ran incredibly deep. Back at Era's place, I was still trying to process the trauma. I thought the drama would quiet down, so I just avoided her at the office. I completely forgot I wasn't fighting alone. For an entire week, Ara came home looking completely drained and stressed out. You could practically feel the heavy tension radiating off her. One night, I brought coffee to her study. Watching her furiously type away, I handed her the coffee and rested my chin on her shoulder, asking what was wrong. She'd been frowning all week. Era thanked me for the warm drink but brushed it off as minor company issues. Though I knew she was hiding something, I didn't push. Soon enough, though, the truth came out. It was Serafina again. I stumbled onto the truth while dropping a file off at the executive suite. Serafina wasn't at her desk. Letting out a quiet sigh of relief, I dropped the folder and turned to leave. Then, her voice drifted from the private lounge. You won't believe her demand divorce, Caspian, and I will stop attacking your family's business. But if you keep playing stubborn, I will gladly ruin your entire family. I keep my word. I'm sure you've felt my influence these past few weeks. Hearing that made my blood boil, but I didn't bust the door open. Yelling at her right now would achieve absolutely nothing. Still, knowing my wife's family was getting completely ruined financially because of me left a sickening taste in my mouth. This proved I had to move faster. I needed to reclaim my company, immediately. Quietly, I backed away. After working just one more day in the assistant's pool, I submitted my immediate resignation. Playing the slow game would let Serafina bankrupt Era before I could even make a move. I had to infiltrate the inner circle to take her down. Once my tasks were handed off, I boxed up my desk, tossed it in the trunk, bought some takeout, and drove straight to Era's office. We needed a serious talk about our marriage and where we stood. When I walked in, Era was completely buried in paperwork. I gently pulled her to a table and set down the boxes. Work can wait, you need to eat. Seeing me show up, she looked thrilled but totally confused. Why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be working? I decided not to hide anything. I told her I resigned, and before she could even ask, I fed her a bite of rice, telling her to eat first. She quieted down, softly watching me, but I could tell a heavy sense of dread was starting to creep in. Once we finished, I dropped the bomb and asked if she'd ever considered divorce. Her worst fears came true. Era froze. For a second, she completely forgot how to breathe. When she finally spoke, her voice shook with intense emotion. Ara asked why I was suddenly bringing this up. I sighed, admitting I overheard Serafina demanding our divorce to save her company. She asked if it was her fault, leaving me genuinely unsure if she would choose me or her family's empire. If she wanted to leave to protect her legacy, I wouldn't stop her, but if she stayed to fight, I'd never betray her. At the very least, I refused to be her downfall. I honestly figured she would at least weigh her options first. But the second I finished speaking, she tackled me into a desperate, crushing hug. Burying her chin in my shoulder, her arms locked around me like a vice as she cried, Caspian, I love you, I want to be with you. Insisting we could face any obstacle together, she said Serafina was nothing to fear, since her only weapon was the business. She begged me not to push her away. Now, this was not the first time she had confessed to me. She had chased me for 3 years, confessing constantly. Even on our blind date, she admitted she never forgot me. But in my own head, I always just assumed I was a passing crush to her. It was not until this very moment, feeling her warm tears soaking through my shirt, that I realized I was completely wrong. My own eyes welled up. Maybe wasting my past life on Serafina just gave me severe imposter syndrome. Or maybe because my family always treated me like a background character compared to their adopted CEO daughter, making me believe I was second best. Honestly, Who wouldn't smile here? I never expected anyone to choose me with such absolute, unwavering certainty. I promised I wouldn't push her away, so we'd face this boss fight together. Hearing my vow, Aura finally breathed a sigh of relief, but she still clung to me like a koala, terrified I would disappear. After 5 solid minutes, I had to speak up. I gasped, asking her to loosen her grip because I literally could not breathe. She quickly let go, stepping back in horror at my red eyes, thinking she actually choked me. She started apologizing frantically, but I just reached out, covered her mouth with one hand, hooked my other arm behind her neck, and pulled her down, planting a soft, quick kiss on the corner of her eye. Her face instantly turned the shade of a fire truck. She stuttered for a solid minute, completely speechless. I told her she had confessed so many times, yet I never gave a proper answer. Staring directly into her eyes, I confessed that I loved her, too, and wanted her to know it. Her face stayed bright red, but her eyes lit up like a galaxy, realizing her love was never one-sided. Aura cried out how happy she was to finally see this day. With everything out in the open, we both got busy. While she focused on saving her company, I set my sights on reclaiming my throne. It took a week for Serafina to realize I had actually quit. At first, she assumed I was just dodging her because of the chaotic kidnapping. Get ready for this. Once she checked HR and realized I was gone, Serafina went completely Godzilla. With a violent sweep of her arm, she cleared her entire desk, sending everything smashing to the floor and terrifying her employees outside. Eventually, the loud destruction stopped, but the heavy doors stayed shut tight. Inside, her eyes turned deadly dark, staring cold-bloodedly at her phone screen as Lysander's name popped up. Mocking me, she muttered if I really thought I was the only man alive, then grabbed her phone, and she dialed the number, cooing out if Lysander was free. Now, I hadn't left the Sterling Group completely, since it was my father's legacy. I wasn't about to just hand it over, positioning myself as an equal rival and declaring open corporate war. Serafina seemingly gave up on me, focusing entirely on romancing Lysander. Rumors leaked of an engagement in 3 months. The media loved their public displays, and she even bought out the city's fireworks for him. She air-freighted 999 imported roses and used thousands of drones to spell a love confession in the sky. It looked like the ultimate billionaire romance. But way down at the very bottom of the comments, someone asked if she was the crazy CEO who kidnapped her own brother, only for it to vanish instantly. The commenter tried to repost it, only to find their entire account had been permanently banned. They probably cursed at their screen for an hour, but Lysander never saw the post and knew nothing about the kidnapping. He only knew Serafina ghosted him briefly before bombarding him with extreme affection, and he never actually agreed to any engagement. He couldn't read her mind, but he knew one thing for sure: she did not genuinely want to marry him. He had no intention of falling into a fake marriage, while Serafina was really just waiting for my reaction. Ever since I re-entered the company as vice president, hiring tutors to speedrun crisis management and master corporate warfare, Serafina knew my plan. But seeing me launch a war against her instead of crawling back left her completely bitter. She couldn't understand how we became enemies. Still, 3 months later, her lavish engagement banquet with Lysander actually happened. It was hosted at a 5-star hotel packed with elites. Since Ara and I had to go, even though our rival companies were locked in a brutal battle to the death, we still played the happy family in public. The venue was pure chaos, fake smiles, corporate networking, and suck-ups crowding the newly engaged couple. I despise these events, but hiding in a corner wasn't an option anymore. Working the room with Era, I learned the ropes of high society schmoozing while guests secretly started picking sides. Everyone here had an agenda, but as the party neared its end, thick smoke suddenly poured from the vents. At first, nobody cared. Then it grew suffocating, and someone shrieked from the doors, "Fire, run." Instantly, the ballroom dissolved into panic as wealthy guests trampled one another, making the entire chaos 100 times worse. Amidst the madness, Ara and I got separated. I fought through the crowd, screaming her name at the top of my lungs until I finally spotted her trapped in a far corner. And would you believe who was right next to her? Serafina and Lysander. How they got grouped up, I didn't care. Charging straight back into the blaze, I called for Era, whose face twisted in absolute terror. She gasped, asking why I came back to such danger, but there was no time. I glanced at Serafina and Lysander, saying nothing. I grabbed Ara's hand, pulling her through the suffocating black smoke as everyone began to choke. Through the blinding haze, a terrifying crack echoed from the giant ceiling beam directly above us. Without thinking, I dragged Ara past the danger zone. I was just about to shout a warning to the other two when the massive burning timber collapsed with a thunderous roar. It completely blocked off Serafina and Lysander behind a massive wall of fire. I couldn't even see them anymore. I hesitated for a second, but I am no action hero. My wife came first. Once we safely escaped, I pointed the firefighters back toward that burning corner. The blaze erupted suddenly, but the rescue was lightning fast, keeping casualties incredibly low. Lysander was trapped deep, but the timber missed him, leaving him with minor scratches. Most injuries were from the stampede. The only one who took critical damage was Serafina, crushed under the beam. At the hospital, a patched-up Lysander sat quietly by Serafina's bedside, staring down at her unconscious face with a heavy sigh. I guess they really weren't meant to be. Everyone believed she loved him, but he knew it was all just a theatrical act. Completely drained by the disaster and the emotional toll, he rested his head against her bed and fell asleep. Lysander guarded her bedside for 3 days before she finally stirred, rasping Caspian in an incredibly faint whisper. It was so quiet you would have missed it, but Lysander heard it clear as day. That single name hit his chest like a heavy anvil, instantly draining all the color from his face. Think about that. Even after I left her behind to save my wife, the very first name she whispers is mine. Serafina slowly opened her eyes. Her torso was in absolute agony, but her lower half felt completely, chillingly numb. Ignoring the strange disconnect in her body, she desperately scanned the room, searching for me. She looked everywhere. Aside from a pale Lysander, there was no sign of anyone else. Her gaze locked onto him. Her first question had nothing to do with herself. Asking where Caspian was and if I was hurt, Lysander quietly replied that I was fine. Hearing that I was safe, Serafina sighed in massive relief. After a long silence, she softly noted that I hadn't come. She didn't say my name, but Lysander knew exactly who she was talking about. He shook his head again, and she didn't push. Instead, she finally asked what was wrong with her legs. Lysander fell completely silent, his eyes dropping to the sterile white blanket covering her lower half. Having seen the horror firsthand, he knew her legs were mangled by the crushing weight and fire. Post-surgery, the doctor was incredibly blunt. Massive nerve damage meant walking again would take a miracle. He debated whether to drop this devastating bomb right after she woke. Was it too cruel for someone as proud as Serafina? He hesitated. But then he remembered how she had used him as a cheap prop just to make me jealous. Cruel? She was the master of cruelty. He decided to drop the brutal truth. The doctor said her leg nerves are severely damaged, and she might never stand again. Serafina froze, completely unable to process it. You will never walk again. Hearing that, she wildly thrashed to sit up, ripping her blanket off in pure denial. Staring down at the thick bandages wrapping her useless legs, her hands trembled violently as she reached out to touch them. Absolutely zero sensation. The only thing she registered was her fingers touching the gauze, but her legs felt completely dead. Panic setting in, she began beating her own thighs as hard as she could over and over. Still nothing. Lysander rushed over to pin her arms. Sarah, stop, pull yourself together. Even if you can't walk, you're still the brilliant Serafina. He pulled her into a hug, sobbing as if his heart was breaking. But behind her back, his face was completely, chillingly blank. But get this, his mind was already miles away. You are on your own now, Serafina. Buried in his fake embrace, she happened to look up, spotting 2 familiar figures walking past the half-open door. They were leaning happily against each other, completely breaking her mind. Outside, Era had inhaled some smoke when I ran back into the fire for her, irritating her throat. Though she insisted she was fine, I was way too paranoid and dragged her to the clinic anyway. Only after the doctor confirmed it was just a mild cough, and she needed vocal rest did I finally relax. See? I told you I was fine, Era croaked. Before she could say another word, I gently placed a hand over her mouth. Remember, the doctor ordered total voice rest, no talking. Amused by her overprotective husband, she blushed, smiled, and mimed zipping her lips shut. I'll behave, her eyes teased. The clinic door wasn't fully closed. Our playful banter echoed right into Serafina's room. Seeing her twisted expression, Lysander immediately knew what she was thinking. He stood up, walked over, and pulled the door wide open. Catching my eye, Lysander stepped aside to reveal a miserable Serafina on the bed, initiating the conversation. Since you are already here, you should come see her. Glancing at her bandaged lower half, Lysander turned back to face me directly. Her legs are ruined, he said. The doctor says she might never walk again. She wants to see you. You were siblings for so long, so go comfort her. Saying that, he brushed past us and walked away, leaving us to deal with her. I stood in the doorway, quietly staring at the red-eyed Serafina shivering on the bed. After a tense, silent standoff, I stepped inside. Era followed right behind me, her eyes locked onto Serafina like a hawk. Serafina found the situation hilarious. She was literally crippled, yet Era was still guarding me like some priceless national treasure. Did that make her feel flattered or just pathetic? Ignoring Era, her eyes glued onto me as I pulled up a chair and stared at her legs. Can you believe how cold he is? You wanted to see me. Just 5 words, flat as ice. I had absolutely nothing else to say. No sadness for her injury, and no pity for her miserable state. Seeing me drop that cold line and turn to leave, She suddenly spoke up. "Congratulations," she sneered. "You finally got exactly what you wanted." I turned back, genuinely confused by her riddle. She let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh, the fire completely gone from her eyes. "You are finally free of me, and I can never fight you for control of the Sterling Group. 2 birds, 1 stone. Shouldn't I congratulate you?" I instantly shut down her twisted logic. "Think whatever helps you sleep at night." With that, I turned around, grabbed Era's hand, and walked out without ever looking back. As soon as we left, Lysander slipped back in. Serafina was still staring blankly at the empty doorway. Lysander followed her empty gaze, but there was nothing there. He simply lowered his head in silence. He didn't ask questions or stop her, just letting her stare into the void until the doctor came by for rounds, gently pushing her back down. "She is in pretty bad shape," the doctor warned Lysander. "She can sit up occasionally, but not for long." Lysander nodded obediently, tucking her blankets in. He played the perfect boyfriend so well that the doctor even teased how lucky they were to have each other. After that day, Era and I never visited the hospital again. Serafina never saw us again. Slowly, she accepted her new reality in a wheelchair, turning completely quiet, withdrawn, and severely depressed. A month later, she was finally discharged. Within that very same month, I completed a hostile takeover of the Sterling Group, officially taking over as the CEO. On the day of my ultimate victory, for the first time since my rebirth, I voluntarily went to see her. "Sister, I can handle things on my own now," I sneered. "You don't have to worry about the company collapsing under me." I looked down at the gloomy, wheelchair-bound Serafina and smiled coldly. "Besides, even though you are out of the company, the family will still support you." Right now, Serafina was in the exact same helpless position I was when she kidnapped me. All she could do was sit silently by the window, forced to listen to my cold victory speech. But I didn't stay long. As I walked out, Lysander arrived, watching me happily jog back toward Era. Lysander couldn't help but feel a sudden twinge of envy. I was incredibly lucky, with a loving family and a doting sister, or at least, before the madness took over. Even after our massive fallout, Ara beautifully filled that void of love, and Lysander could see she genuinely loved me. And the current Serafina deeply loved me, too. Lysander turned away, gripping the newly approved green card in his pocket, and stepped into Serafina's room. She had already spun her wheelchair to face him. She was not surprised to see him, asking if he was going to abandon her too. She watched as Lysander raised an eyebrow, dropping his act entirely. "I'm moving abroad," he said, seeing her look of shock. Lysander smiled and completely dropped the mic. "But Sarah, you have it backward. I'm not the one abandoning you. You abandoned me years ago. Remember that falling billboard? You instinctively shielded him, and when he got married, you crashed his wedding. You didn't look like a worried sister at all. You looked like a jealous ex. You even kidnapped him and hid it from me. And in that fire, I was the one closer to you. I was the one most likely to get hurt, but from start to finish, you never once asked if I was okay. Sarah, you stopped loving me ages ago. All your grand proposals and public affection were just a performance to test his reaction. I didn't give you the reaction you wanted, so you felt forced to walk a path you hated. Your acting is honestly terrible. I saw right through it on day one. At first, I was bitter. Bitter that you supposedly loved me for so long, then suddenly switched targets. But now, I'm just exhausted. I refuse to be an extra in your twisted little movie anymore. Have a nice life, Serafina. Goodbye." Without waiting for her to respond, Lysander turned on his heel and walked out, leaving her frozen in absolute shock. She had expected him to leave, assuming he just couldn't handle having a disabled girlfriend. But hearing his final words, she realized with horror that he knew everything from the very beginning. He knew her heart had changed. Looking around the massive, empty room, her chest felt completely hollow. She had absolutely nothing left. Once the golden child of the elite, she was now just a prisoner trapped in a dark room. She lost everything, and I walked away. I was the one who won, so I could afford to speak peacefully to her. But that was where our story ended. Madame Sterling hadn't visited her since the kidnapping incident, and today, Lysander walked out on her, too. Serafina was officially completely alone. The very villa she bought to lock me up had ultimately become her own solitary confinement. Once I took full control of the company, the absolute first thing I did was call off the attack on Era's family business. The Shen family quickly bounced back, and everything finally started heading toward a happy ending. Except now, I was the one working like a dog, pulling endless all-nighters. But one night, I actually managed to get off work early. You can bet when I finally dragged my zombie body home, seeing my bloodshot eyes completely broke Ara's heart. After my shower, she tried to push me into bed, but I just slumped onto her shoulder, finally done with all the urgent work. "I'm so exhausted I could die. Don't move and just let me lean on you," I muttered, and my rare clingy side totally melted her heart. Stroking my hair like a pet, She promised to carry me to bed and let me sleep in since tomorrow was the weekend. She suggested we go on a trip, and hearing that, my eyes instantly lit up. Since I respawned, I literally had not had one day of pure, stress-free fun. The corporate grind was absolutely destroying my soul, though things would get easier later on. The weather is perfect for stargazing, so let's camp at South Mountain, she said, as I reached my arms up like a toddler, calling it a genius idea. Carry me to bed, my legs have uninstalled, I joked. Aura laughed, scooped me up princess style, and carried me off to the bedroom. I was so exhausted that by the time she carried me those 5 feet to the bed, I was already snoring loudly. Looking at me softly, she kissed my forehead and whispered that she would always be here. I slept like a rock, finally waking up the next day at 2 p.m. My stomach was screaming, so I walked out barefoot while rubbing my eyes, reaching the kitchen just as Aura was bringing out fresh, hot food. I sniffed the air like a cartoon dog, wondering where the chef was and if she had cooked this herself. The chef has the day off, so today I'm serving the young master, she teased, putting the food down before grabbing my slippers. Put your shoes on, if you catch a cold, the trip is cancelled, she warned, as I kicked into my slippers with a careless grin. Who cares? I know you won't let me freeze, I mumbled. Aura, washing her hands, just laughed at my childish antics. You know exactly how to play me, she smiled, telling me to eat first and drink some warm milk. Taking tiny sips of the milk, I watched her serve me food as pure happiness overflowed from my chest. I honestly used to think I was cursed, loving the wrong psycho, getting my mom killed, dying a horrible death, then respawning, only to find out that Psycho also came back. I ran away, she went on the attack, and I almost got locked in a dark basement again. But thank God, Aura never gave up on me, and I never gave up on saving myself. Why are you staring at me? Is there something on my face? She asked. Don't you love how soft she is? She rubbed her cheek, so adorably confused that I laughed, then crooked my finger at her pouty face. Lean in for a second, I told her. There is something on your face. The moment she got close, I quickly kissed her cheek. That is a sweet kiss just for you. After lunch, we packed for camping since she already prepped 90% of the gear while I slept. We only needed a few minor things before driving out to South Mountain, hoping to escape the brutal afternoon heat. Thanks to my 14-hour coma sleep, I was practically vibrating with pure energy. Once we arrived, I dumped 100% of the tent setup on my amazing wife and ran off to explore like a hyper golden retriever. By the time I walked back, the tent was barely half finished. I saw her sweating bullets, trying to build it completely alone. Feeling a rare sudden guilt, I snuck up and poked her. Startled, she dropped the air pump. The half-inflated tent immediately hissed and went flat on the grass. I offered a guilty smile, so she just sighed and started all over. When the tent was finally up, the pitch-black sky was perfect for stargazing, though the mountain was still packed with other tourists. Soft yellow lantern lights slowly started flickering to life all around our camp. Under that pitch-black night, the camping lanterns and the infinite starry sky blended into a gorgeous masterpiece. Tucked away in a dark corner, we shared a deep, passionate kiss. While the Sterling group was booming under my rule, I paid a mysterious visit to Aura at her office. Aura, I have good and bad news, I teased. Which first? The moment she saw me, her internal alarms immediately went off. The last time I showed up like this and talked in mysterious riddles, I ended up demanding a divorce. She stared at me, mentally preparing to leap across the desk and cover my mouth. Give me the bad news first, she said. I nodded tragically. Her fight or flight kicked in. Get this, the bad news is our quiet, romantic two-person world is officially over. She stared in absolute shock as I leaned over the desk to kiss her. Before she could process it, the door clicked wide open. I jumped back instantly. We both spun around, catching a whole squad of secretaries peeking through the door. They offered a deeply awkward collective smile and slowly pulled the door shut, whispering for us to please continue. I blushed furiously and glared as she tried to pull me back for round 2. I quickly blurted out that the good news is she is going to be a mom. Aura's eyes went incredibly wide, staring down at her stomach, her voice shook with absolute joy. I am going to be a mom, she whispered, grabbing my hand and skipping to yank the door open. The secretaries were still clearly eavesdropping, but Aura did not care at all. She was glowing as she announced to the entire office to celebrate her becoming a mother, doubling everyone's salary this month. Cue the wild cheers. The secretaries completely lost their minds. That night, Aura took 1 billion photos of her ultrasound and the positive pregnancy test. She absolutely spammed her social media accounts with the pictures. The caption of every single post was essentially screaming that she is going to be a mom. Then, in a moment of ultimate petty triumph while I was not paying attention, she selected the ultrasound photo and messaged it to a contact she had not touched in years, telling her we won and are heading toward true happiness. There was no immediate reply, but Aura did not care. She knew Serafina saw it and was likely crying in a dark room, but she was dead wrong. Inside a pitch-black, Dead silent villa. The only glowing light came from a single phone screen. Serafina definitely read the text, but she was not crying. Instead, she rolled her wheelchair into the bathroom and filled the tub with warm water. Swapping chats, she sent one final message. Using her arms, she painfully dragged her paralyzed body inside. She picked up a sharp fruit knife she had prepared earlier and smoothly sliced her own wrist open. Closing her eyes, she slowly sank deep into the warm water. Meanwhile, clear across the city, my own phone screen suddenly lit up. It was an ominous text from Serafina, containing only one single word: Caspian.